everyone, my name is Priya and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be painting this still life and I'll be showing you how I did it. So I'm starting off with my sketchbook and I'm just putting a border with some washi tape. That's just to keep my illustration clean around the edges. And then I am using a water soluble graphite pencil just to sketch in all the elements for the still life. Now I'm sketching in everything that's on my reference photo. This is a royalty free reference photo that I'm using. And I've already sketched in the candle, the paper. I'm sketching in the fountain pen, the holder for the fountain pen. Now all the supplies I'm using will be listed in the description box below if you want to know what I'm using. But I've just sketched also the wax seal as well. That's on the paper. There's going to be a little note. And I'm also sketching in the ink bottle and some books in the back. So I am going to change this a bit by the books because it was a bit too, the book on the top was a bit too high up, so I brought that down a bit. And then I painted in the stopper for the ink bottle, and then I realized that the book at the bottom was a bit too straight in line with the one on top, so I wanted to just turn that a bit more at an angle so that it's not exactly the same as the one on top. So I added a bit of design to the fountain pen and I'm just now writing in the little note. I will, when I ink it, I will tell you what's written on there, but I've just inked that in and I'm just inking everything in with a fine liner. Now I'm not worried about it having the lines for the outlines with the fine liner or the black fine liner because that's just going to help me to make this piece more illustrative. So I'm not too worried if there's outlines for the fine liner showing through in the final piece. That's why I'm using a black fine liner. This is more of an illustrative piece. Now what's written on that little note is 1st November 2022. That's the day I painted this, and it says creativity can happen at any time. Feed your creative mind by experimenting with new products and art supplies and new techniques and subjects. So the subjects is blocked off by the pen, and then it says let your creativity flow. That's where the ink spills are, or the little ink droplets are. So that was a very fun drawing, or this was a very fun drawing to do, and I really enjoyed it. It did take a while. I think I took about just over 2.5 hours to paint this from the initial sketch until the final painting. So it did take a while, but I was enjoying the entire process, and I always say enjoy the process of creating your artwork, not only the final piece. Because once you enjoy the initial process and the whole journey to creating the piece, when you see the final result, you'll be even more proud of it and you'll really enjoy it. So always enjoy the process of creating. So now that line that I did on the top, that was actually a mistake on my part. I should not have included that. That was the division or the end of the table, and then that little piece on top, you see the wall in the background. Now I know that was what was in the reference photo, but it did not work for me when I did the actual painting. So later you're going to see me trying to cover that up and get it to blend in, although it was really annoying me that it was there and I couldn't cover it. But yeah, later on when I painted in the desk, I realized that it was not going to work with that, because sometimes in the reference photo you don't need to include everything as it is. You can change it to how you'd like it. So sometimes certain things, leaving them out is a better option than to include them. So just bear that in mind when using reference photos. So now I started painting off the candle. You can see I left the bottom part of the candle with a darker, sort of a grayish tone, and then I included the lighter areas with the yellowish color. That's for the light of the candle. And then as well I included that yellow color or light yellow over the paper as well, in certain areas of the paper where the light is shining from the or reflecting from the candle. And then I went in and I started painting all the base layers. For the feather, I painted in the little wax seal stamp, which I actually added afterwards. After I did the initial sketch, I realized the place was a bit, or that section was a bit empty, so I just included that. And then now I started painting in the pen as well as the holder for the pen. I'm just including, I'm painting over for the shadow areas and retaining those whiter areas for the highlights. Although I did not leave it stark white, I have added a very light layer of gray, and then I'm darkening the gray to create the shadow areas, which will automatically make the lighter areas look like highlighted areas. So I am drawing layers in between as I'm painting. I prefer to do this especially with watercolors, because watercolors can bleed into wet areas if you're painting. Like if I did like I'm doing the base layer for the desk, if I try to paint maybe the ink bottle while it's still wet, that ink bottle color will bleed into the desk color. So to avoid that, dry the layers thoroughly in between each layer that you apply of your watercolor. That's also just to avoid you lifting up any previous layers that you have painted. If you try to paint over a layer that you've already painted and it's not completely dry, you will lift some of that color up, and then you'll have these blotches of white which will not look good in your final piece. So try to avoid it and dry your layers thoroughly between each layer. I sometimes don't listen to that advice myself, and I still paint wet, and yeah, that's not a good thing to do. Try to let your layers dry in between before painting in the next layer. So now I'm using my brush. I'm using a round brush for this entire piece, and you can see I'm painting in the areas. I haven't used any flat brushes. I'm using round brushes for this piece. I'm using two different sizes. One's a fine, very small brush, and then the other one's a little bit of a bigger brush. I will have all the supplies, as I said, listed in the description box below. But now I've just added some design to the wood for the desk, and then I painted over and added those lines of the different pieces of planks of wood that's been put together for this desk. This is when I realized that the line was just not working for me with that wall, and I painted over with some of the design and some of the table color, and then I left that to dry, and then I was working on the ink bottle, and I just started adding the ink and painting it in as dark as I could go. And then I'm using the white watercolor, and the white watercolor from this set really is light, so you can get it to really show. So I just added some of that white for the highlighted areas or the lightest areas of the bottle, or where the light is hitting the bottle. And then I've just added some more details on another layer for the books. I've also colored in the pages of the books just to make them look aged and more vintage, because I do like the vintage look of things as well, or vintage stuff as well. So yeah, I wanted to include that for this piece. And then I've just painted a bit more color to the candle, and now I'm just adding some of those shadows. That shadow around the ink bottle was a bit too dark for me. I didn't really like that, so I lightened it up while it was still wet. And then I started adding or just putting in the shadow for the pen. You can see I made a mistake there, but that wasn't a major problem. All I had to do is just wipe it off with some paper towels because it was still wet, and then dab it off. Be careful not to press your paper towel and drag on the paper, because sometimes you can damage the paper depending on what paper you're using. And also just dab it if you're lifting off water, and then also sometimes you can just wet the area with a layer of water before dabbing to remove a color that was incorrectly placed or painted in. So just bear that in mind when you are working with watercolor, if you need to remove a color or if you need to correct something. So you can see this is where I tried to just blend that line area into the desk surface. It was really bothering me, but I came too far with this painting to want to start it again, and I was really enjoying the entire process, so I wasn't really too bothered about it, even though it could still be seen in some parts of the top area, because it is a black fine liner. It's hard to cover up with watercolors, but I was still happy with the piece at the final piece. So sometimes if you don't have to restart a painting if you don't feel like it, or if you feel you did a lot in it to just start over. You can just continue working with it until it looks good, and it can change. I mean, I tried my best to fix it as far as possible, to remove those lines, paint over it, cover it up. And this is watercolor I'm using, so it's a bit difficult to cover up mistakes, but I tried my best, and I was actually very happy and very proud of the final result, and I really enjoyed the process of painting. So I wasn't too bothered by those lines, although they normally would be really bothering me, but for some reason I think I enjoyed this process of creating this piece so much that I didn't really pay attention to that much, and I didn't let it bother me. So I just wanted to enjoy the creating process and create this page and really enjoy what I've created. So now comes the most satisfying part of any artwork, is removing the washi tape to reveal those straight, neat, clean edges for my illustration. And that's something that I really enjoy, and I think all artists can appreciate this, is removing the washi tape. So I guess that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found it helpful. If you have, don't forget to like and share. Feel free to comment below and don't forget to subscribe. Till the next one. Bye.